Hello, this is Matthew with Simplilearn, and let's dig into how DevOps, which is developers and operators working together, is the key for successful continuous delivery. So DevOps is an evolution of the Agile model. The Agile model really is great for gathering requirements and for developing and testing out your solutions. And what we want to be able to do is kind of address that challenge and that gap between the ops team and the dev team. And so with DevOps, what we're doing is bringing together the operations team and the development team into a single team. And they are able to then work more seamlessly together because they are integrated to be able to build out solutions that are being tested in a production-like environment so that when we actually deploy, we know that the code itself will work. The operations team is then able to focus on what they're really good at, which is analyzing the production environment and being able to provide feedback to the developers on what is being successful. So we're able to make adjustments in our code that is based on data. So let's step through the different phases of a DevOps team. So typically you'll see that the DevOps team will actually have 8 phases. Now this is somewhat similar to Agile, and what I'd like to point out at the time is that again, Agile and DevOps are very closely related, that Agile and DevOps are closely related delivery models that you can use. With DevOps, it's really just extending that model with the key phases that we have here. So let's step through each of these key phases. So the first phase is planning, and this is where we actually sit down with a business team and we go through and understand what their goals are. The second stage is, as you can imagine, and this is where it's all very similar to Agile, is that the coders actually start coding. But they'll start using tools such as Git, which is a distributed version control software. It makes it easier for developers to all be working on the same code base rather than bits of the code rather than them working on bits of the code that they are responsible for. So the goal with using tools such as Git is that each developer always has the current and latest version of the code. You then use tools such as Maven and Gradle as a way to consistently build out your environment. And then we also use tools to actually automate our testing. Now, what's interesting is when we use tools like Selenium and JUnit is that we're moving into a world where our testing is scripted, the same as our build environment and the same as using our Git environment. We can start scripting out these environments. And so we actually have scripted production environments that we're moving towards. Jenkins is the integration phase that we use for our tools. And another pointer here is that the tools that we're listing here, these are all open source tools. These are tools that any team can start using. We want to have tools that control and manage the deployment of code into the production environments. And then finally, tools such as Ansible and Chef will actually operate and manage those production environments so that when code comes to them, that code is compliant with the production environment, so that when the code is then deployed to the many different production servers, that the expected results of those servers, which is you want them to continue running, is received. And then finally, you monitor the entire environment so you can actually zero in on spikes and issues that are relevant to either the code or changing consumer habits on the site. So let's step through some of those tools that we have in the DevOps environment. So here we have is a breakdown of the DevOps tools that we have. And again, one of the things I want to point out is that these tools are open source tools. There are also many other tools. This is just really a selection of some of the more popular tools that are being used. But it's quite likely that you're already using some of these tools today. You may already be using Jenkins. You may already be using Git. But some of the other tools really help you create a fully scriptable environment so that you can actually start scripting out your entire DevOps tool set. This really helps when it comes to speeding up your delivery, because the more you can actually script out the work that you're doing, the more effective you can be at running automation against those scripts, and the more effective you can be at having a consistent experience. So let's step through this DevOps process. So we go through and we have our continuous delivery, which is our plan, code, build, and test environment. So what happens if you want to make a release? Well, the first thing you want to do is send out your files to the build environment, and you want to be able to test the code that you've been created. Because we're scripting everything in our code, from the actual unit testing being done to the all the way through to the production environment, because we're testing all of that, we can very quickly identify whether or not there are any defects within the code. If there are defects, we can send that code right back to the developer with a message saying what the defect is, and the developer can then fix that with information that is real on either the code or the production environment. If, however, your code passes the scripting tests, it can then be deployed. And once it's out to deployment, you can then start monitoring that environment. What this provides you is the opportunity to speed up your delivery. So you go from the waterfall model, which is weeks, months, or even years between releases, to agile, which is 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on your sprint cadence, to where you are today with DevOps, where you can actually be doing multiple releases every single day. So there are some significant advantages, and there are companies out there that are really zeroing in on those advantages. If we take any one of these companies, such as Google, any given day will actually process 50 to 100 new releases on their website through their DevOps teams. In fact, they have some great videos on YouTube that you can find out on how their DevOps teams work. Netflix is also a similar environment. Now, what's interesting with Netflix is that Netflix have really fully embraced DevOps within their development team. And so they have a DevOps team, and Netflix is a completely digital company. So they have software on phones, on smart TVs, on computers, and on websites. Interestingly, though, the DevOps team for Netflix is only 70 people. And when you consider that a third of all internet traffic on any given day is from Netflix, it's really a reflection on how effective DevOps can be when you can actually manage that entire business with just 70 people. So there are some key advantages that DevOps has. It's the actual time to create and deliver software is dramatically reduced, particularly compared to waterfall. Complexity of maintenance is also reduced because you're automating and scripting out your entire environment. You're improving the communication between all your teams, so teams don't feel like they're in separate silos, but that are actually working cohesively together. And that there is continuous integration and continuous delivery so that your consumer, your customer, is constantly being delighted. So hopefully this was of benefit to you today. If it was, please like and subscribe below, leave any comments, and we'll get back to you. Thanks very much.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.